was I going to say about the word? Oh, I got 15 shillings a week to start off with. And I think when I finished, after 7 years in the office there, I got about £2, which wasn't a lot. And that's $4. I suppose that would be now.
And did you stop? You stopped.
And we got a beautiful box and bought. In those days, we all saved and bought towels and everything, sheets and everything, and we did all that on the small wage. But things weren't so dear then.
No. What sort of things did you do? Like when you went out with Jack, where did you go?
Oh well, we used to have some wonderful weekends down at South Brighton with the Rundle family, mother and father and Jack. It was lovely, and my sisters would go too, and we were right near the beach and had a wonderful life really down there, and that carried on right through our life, that lovely little house at South Brighton. And we'd go down for 6 weeks. It was lovely to stay there, nice and handy to town.
And what about, like, did you go to the pictures or anything like that?
Oh yes, but not very much. And we'd have to go on a tram, and we had trams in those days. And in those days the tram went through Richmond and went to Brighton, right down through Burwood. And we could go to the beach from there, catch a tram. And a double-decker tram, we'd go on the top. And that was always exciting to go there.
And you always hear on the radio people go on about these dances.
Oh,
did you go to dances?
Yes,
what was so
wonderful
wonderful about
dances. My father was a very active member in the bowling club, Shirley Bowling Club, and they would have these wonderful dances in Hills Road, Shirley, in Shirley Road, Shirley, and we'd go there. But it was nothing for a number of girls all to walk home at night after the dance, all happy, and no fear of anybody molesting us or anything like that. And then, of course, as we got older, we paired off. The boys would ask us if they could take us home, which was thrilling. So that was that.
Oh, right. And so, did you have, like, I was talking to Nana and she said about in Ashburton they used to have lots of picnics and that sort of thing, like big sort of town or picnics.
Yes.
Did you do that sort of thing?
Well, I only remember one really, that we went, boys and girls, and that was down to South Brighton, to the Pleasant Point Domain, and that was lovely. But we all did things together, and we did a lot of things, socials at the church. We were really, that was our one place to have things like that. The church was the centre of our lives really in those days. Sunday school and everything. My father was the Sunday school superintendent for 25 years, so we had a good grounding.
Right. So how many children did you have? Jumping through the years.
We had, when Jack and I had 3 children. Anne was the first one, and then John was about 2.5 years after Anne, and then we had Rick, who was younger than John by about 5 years. And the children went to Victory Memorial School, which was a church school connected with the Anglican Church. By that time I had joined up with that, and our children went there. And it was a dear little school, and I worked hard for that school, but there were only about 20 children, 100 children there, but it was lovely.
Must have been a lot more hard work bringing up children than it is today, like with housework and that sort of thing.
Yes,
not having...
it took me all day on a Monday to wash and scrub round the steps and scrub the kitchen floor and scrub all round. I couldn't possibly cook a lunch. It was just too much to do that. It was a day of absolute work on a Monday with the copper, and sometimes it would just about boil, and I'd be stuffing Auckland Weeklies. That was the wonderful book in those days, to just get it to properly boil.
Oh.
And they were Jack's pride and joy, and if he'd known that a few of his Auckland Weeklies were boiling the copper, he'd be most upset. But he didn't know. Didn't tell him that.
Why Nana said about that too, how you had to have your washing out on a Monday.
Yes, we always did it on a Monday.
You don't know why?
We had to put it through the wringer by a hand wringer, and old wooden tubs, And I can remember one day at home, I had a thing called a spoke shave in the wash house. My father and mother were helping with a jumble sale in Richmond, and I spent the whole afternoon, it was a wet Saturday, and I pared the tub with it in my mind that I'd make room for my mother's stomach, who didn't have any stomach. She was a nice slim person. And when my father got home, he nearly had a fit, and the only thing he said was, "You've ruined the sale of the house." But we managed to stay in it for about 40 or 50 years after that. They did. So, and
what's a spoke shave?
well, it cut, you held it both hands and it cut the wood, and the wood was lovely. I had the most wonderful afternoon. The top of the tub, the wooden tub, was getting cut down. But I didn't make much headway on it. I was in disgrace.
And so you'd have had your children sort of during or leading up to the Second World War, would you?
Yes, yes. John was born in 1940 and Ricky in 1945 at the finish of the war, when the Japanese...
And did your husband have to go to war or not?
He didn't pass because we had a lead light factory and mirrors and things, and of course glass and everything. We couldn't get it to New Zealand. It came from Germany, a lot of it, and some came from England, but that put a stop to our glass because we couldn't get it. And Jack got asthma, and I still think that that was lead poisoning because he was working in lead all the time. And now they won't let a child even lick the lead or on a toy, the paint. So, and he never, I know he didn't wash his hands when you'd bring him out a cup of tea or anything. He'd just stop and have it. So there we are. So
what did his job have to change during the war?
Yes, it did. He got an insurance book and did the Littleton. He used to have to go by train down to Littleton, and he walked around Littleton streets. People would pay $1 a week or something for their insurance, and that's what he did. And then he'd be back at the workshop perhaps 2 or 3 days a week. When before the war started, we had 10 men working for us, but as the glass that was scarce, we couldn't keep them on. But they had apprentices and men, and they were very busy because there was a lot of building going on in Christchurch, and they made the lead lights for different houses.
Can you think of any prominent buildings that they made windows for?
No, I can't really. They're mostly houses. There's one down here in Columbus Street that I look at and remember coming down with him while he delivered the lead lights there.
And did he get back into that after the war?
No, never so much. We had a wonderful glass that was called rubberized glass, and we had the agency for it from Germany, and it had rubber in between 2 sheets of glass, and it had it was for motor cars, for windscreens and things like that, and it was safe because if they had an accident, the rubber, the glass stuck to the rubber. But that, of course, never came back to New Zealand after the war. That was I don't know why, but I suppose something else took its place.
Yeah.
But that was quite good. People were very interested in that, and they had they cut the glass with the glass cutters, and then they cut the rubber with razor blades. I remember seeing them doing that. So that was it. But then Jack died in 1950, so that wasn't long after the war.
What happened to him?
Well, just we were on holiday in Alexandra, and he dropped dead beside me, but he had this dreadful asthma, or this wheezing and everything. And we had been to a doctor in Alexandra in the morning. We were down there on holiday, and luckily his mother was with us because he was her only one, and his father had died a bit before this, and so I had to give Jack's measurements over the phone to Rindle in Christchurch, the undertakers, and the funeral director had to come from Queenstown, and he didn't arrive till 11 o'clock at night, and as he walked into the room where Jack was, he said, "Oh, it's Jack Rundle," and I went to school with him in Christchurch, which was quite unusual, wasn't it? But there we are, that was it. And then I went back to an office when Jack died, and had 3 children to bring up, and we had a very happy life. We had no cares or anything. We were all very united, and we had a fabulous mother-in-law. I did. Wonderful. And it was nothing for me to come home from the office and she'd been in and done the ironing. And Ricky used to have pigeons, and he was no trouble. He just played with these pigeons with his boyfriends in our yard and let them off. And you know, he used to go to Shirley Boys High and take the pigeons, and I would know that he'd got there safely because they'd come flying back, which was a great thrill for him. And
did you have to go back to work? Like they didn't?
Oh yes, no, there was a widow's pension, but it wasn't. Well, I don't know what it was really, but it was better to go back and be amongst people. That was the wonderful thing for me, to get out and have something other than the children, because my life was surrounded by them then, and it was all happy. And you know, we got on. We had lovely holidays, of course. I had the holidays off from work, and we would go down to Brighton to our house down there. It's been 6 weeks at Christmas. It was lovely.
Because you had your driver's license, like, well, I remember when you had your driver's license. When did you get that?
I got that when Ricky was a baby in 1945, and that was a godsend, because that took us up and down to wherever we wanted to go. Really, it was lovely.
Was that quite
an old Studebaker we had?
Was it quite a thing for a lady to drive? Like,
oh no, I think it was becoming more common, but it took a lot of courage to get it, I might tell you. And I remember getting out of the car after the man said, the inspector had said I'd passed, and told him it was worse than having a baby out there. He was shaking from head to foot with fright.
Were the tests sort of the same?
Yes, up the hill here at Dyer's Pass, we had to back and go on up there. But I never ever went on a hill again. I had enough, thank you. It was enough for me. Then I met Vic Aldridge, and we married in 1960. And we had 31 years together, and we joined 2 families of 3 children each together. And sold both our houses and bought one in Kashmir.
Because you'd known him before, hadn't you?
Yes, I'd known him before, but I hadn't seen him for 25 years, and he hadn't seen me either. And we met at a mutual friend's 50th birthday party at the United Service Hotel, which was in the square in those days. And it was awfully thrilling to go out to dinner like that. We didn't go out places like that normally. It was a real thrill to go there to this beautiful dining room, and everything lovely.
And how did you meet him in the first place?
Well, at this, I met him when his wife, Mary, came up, before they were married, came up to play basketball in Christchurch, and they went to a mutual friend, Mavis Muschamp she was, and we went to their house for a party, and I met them there. But that was the last they saw of me or me of them for 25 years.
Because he played as cornet or something, didn't he? Wouldn't you?
I accompanied him, Vic, because he was the champion cornet player of New Zealand, and I accompanied him at one party, and he stopped me halfway through and told me I had played the wrong timing, and I always thought of him as, oh, blow him. I didn't approve of that at all, but we didn't meet again for 25 years. Then by that time we were both on our own and had 3 children each. So we joined together 2 families, and they've always got on very well indeed, which we were lucky about, weren't we? I never had a doubt that they wouldn't. Never entered my head that they wouldn't all be all right, and they were. But,
did you play the piano a lot?
Yes, a lot. At parties, and we were in demand, and Vic and I were in demand.